let me introduce you to Cougar Purity RGB, a sleek, compact Micro-ATX / Mini-ITX case at what can be considered a fair price, $50 to $70 if I'm not mistaken, but it's not widely available just yet. Still, I should let you know that today's case does a lot of things right, but on the other hand, it also comes with a few drawbacks which you wouldn't necessarily come to expect. So at the end of the day, is the Purity RGB suitable for your next small, sleek budget build, or should you avoid this case and grab something else instead? What comes included is the case itself, a quick installation guide, as well as the required screws along with some cable ties. As far as the aesthetics are concerned, with today's Purity RGB, Cougar are heading more into the sleek and elegant territory, and I certainly do welcome it, since I personally like that approach. Nonetheless, I wouldn't necessarily state today's model wins me over 100% in terms of looks. The overall build quality is not great, but totally acceptable, especially at a price tag of $50 to $70. A small highlight surely has to be the hinged tempered glass panel that is held in place by magnets. That is elegance. We are definitely talking of compact here. The Purity measures in at 200mm in width, 392mm in height, and a depth of 360mm. There's just support for Micro-ATX and Mini-ITX motherboards. Cable routing cathode holes, there are plenty, but none are rubberized, basically no rubber grommets. The front sure does appear sleek and elegant, but kinda doesn't really fulfill one key functionality, and that is airflow. The only vents we see are along the left side of the panel, but the airflow cannot be considered truly sufficient by any means. On the right, there's not even a single opening. Once we take off the front cover, sadly behind it, there's no pre-installed fan, but at least a long magnetic dust filter. Even at the top we see our usual magnetic dust filter coming into play, and on the bottom for the power supply, we're looking at one of those super standard cheap filters. At least it's removable and cleanable. In total, pre-installed in a case is just a single 120mm rear fan featuring ARGB lighting. To make my disappointment slightly worse, out of the box, it needs to be connected via SATA power, meaning there's no way we can adjust any fan speeds with our motherboard, which is a real bummer. The only good thing being the fan is fairly quiet, at least some comfort. The ARGB lighting can be adjusted in colors and effects via a button press directly on the case, although the choice is rather lackluster. Luckily, we're given the option to hook up and synchronize the lighting via a standard 3-pin ARGB header through our motherboard. According to what Cougar officially states, in theory, there's room for quite the number of fans in here, and even up to a 240mm radiator. Unfortunately, there's some fine print there to watch out for, and that is that the max motherboard height should not exceed 34mm in order to successfully mount a radiator to the top. But even then, even our water block or pump could cause some clearance issues with the radiator. I can confirm the issues, since it initially was my plan to go with a 240mm AIO. An extra 2 cm in case height surely wouldn't have hurt and actually would have made the difference. So all we can do now is stick with air coolers in this case, I guess. Something the manufacturer doesn't officially state is the fact that on the PSU shroud there can be mounted up to 2 fans. The required screws for that are not included though. Despite the case being fairly compact, we luckily don't need to grab one of those pricey SFX power supplies. Instead, we are free to keep using our conventional ATX power source as long as the length doesn't exceed 160mm, that is. Now let's talk SSDs and HDDs. Behind the motherboard tray, you can pop in and screw a 2.5-inch SSD into place. Another one directly on the main side, but with a max thickness of 7mm. In the bottom chamber, at the top, we actually see a nice storage tray. Onto that one, you could screw a 2.5-inch SSD or use the space for your 3.5-inch HDD instead. There are also more options. We could mount either 2.5 or 3.5-inch drives directly to the case's bottom. In terms of front I/O, we are getting 2 pieces of USB 3.2 Gen 1 along with 1 USB 2.0 port. No sign of any Type-C connectivity though. What a bummer. Very well, building hardware into this case, apart from the ordeal with the 240mm AIO liquid cooler I wanted to install initially, went fairly well and harmless. While the cable management on the case's primary side might appear slightly chaotic, it's not exactly uncommon to see this with Mini-ITX motherboards. Air coolers, as long as you don't go overboard with their height, shouldn't pose any issues in here. Even graphics cards that are a bit on the longer side fit. Still be mindful, especially when having front fans installed. Something that greatly bothered me are those expansion slot covers that need to be broken out. In my humble opinion, these days that's not really acceptable anymore. I simply can't stand that, and it immediately makes any case drop in rank for me. The case deserves some juicy deduction in points for that one alone. With the out-of-the-box experience, basically with what the case comes equipped with, you shouldn't look into building necessarily hot components in here. We'd have to install 1 or 2 fans of our own in the front. Decent cable management is a pain to achieve. Granted, I'm pretty bad at it, generally speaking, but a bit more space to work with surely wouldn't have hurt either. The right, solid side panel hardly came back on and kinda reminded me of packing luggage with too much stuff in there. So it may sound as though I'm non-stop criticizing this case. On the other hand, one shouldn't forget we're dealing with a budget case that also does many things well. So I guess we'll just have to live with a few compromises and flaws. All in all, the Cougar Purity RGB isn't a bad PC case to pick when not having too high expectations and still wanting something sleek and nice on one's desk. With that being said, thanks a lot for watching guys, and until the next one.